Lateral Thinking, a r/HFY story, submitted to the writing prompt Innovation, to the category Outside the Box. Written by Ogiwan, performed by Dr. Strange Charm and Wizard Merlin.
What a disgusting collection of primitives,
thought Agora Azuri, surveying the crowd at this air show that he had only attended under the orders of the Consul General, as if there was anything they could possibly learn from this cultural exchange with these savages. He was at best half paying attention to Gazelle, the diplomat accompanying him. He paid none at all to the security brute following them, fucking Mira mid-ear. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Oshkosh Air and Space Exposition. Give another round of applause to our Golden Knights. The crowd roared their approval of the dashing grav-shoot demonstration as the announcer continued to build up the hype. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this November is the 200th anniversary of the first major battle of the Vietnam War, the Battle of La Drang Valley. Well, we can't wait that long to commemorate it, so make way for the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry Reenactment Group. In the distance, Agora heard a faint whoop whoop whoop, and what sounded like a sort of stringed instrument behind him as the security group groaned in dismay. Gonzal turned to him and inquired,
"What is it, Sergeant Pat?"
Pat snorted. Come on, Ride of the Valkyries for an air mobile assault? It's the most overdone troop ever. Gonzal's reply was drowned out as a trio of vehicles swooped overhead. Agora's eyes opened wide in astonishment, and his skin prickled in shock as he realised what he was seeing. They were flying without wings. He willed to face Gonzal.
Humanity discovered anti-gravity 200 years ago? I'm sorry, what?
Gonzal raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by his tone.
Those crafts
Igor stabbed a finger at them.
are flying without wings? We Makari only discovered anti-gravity 50 of your years ago. How did you discover anti-gravity before us?
Pat interjected. Well, it isn't actually anti-gravity.
Don't speak to me, you brute. Gonzal, what are those?
Agora snarled, stabbing another finger at the hovering aircraft, now launching rockets and spitting flames from rotary cannons mounted to the stubby protrusions on the sides of the vehicles.
Sergeant Pat is right. They aren't using anti-gravity. They're helicopters.
Gonzal explained patiently. Igora snarled.
And what does your religion's underworld have to do with anything?
Gonzal blinked.
Silence! I will figure it out on my own.
Igora whipped out his data slate and began entering and manipulating data. He glanced up briefly when another group of vehicles swooped overhead, these with longer bodies and no protrusions on the side. He quickly raised his data slate up to let the laser ranging array take a brief series of accurate measurements.
No. It can't be a simple rotary air impeller. The power curve would be off the charts.
Igora ran the numbers every which way he could think of. Nothing made sense. The cracks and whoops of chemical-powered firearms and explosives only furthered his headache. After several minutes of fruitless calculations, Igora flung his data slate away in a rage. He rounded on Gonzal and roared.
How do they fly?
Gonzal put his hands up defensively.
Sergeant Pat is probably better suited to answer that question. He knows a lot more about antique military equipment than I do.
Igora whirled and glared at Pat, who responded with a wide grin. Master Scientist, how does the Thunderbolt over there fly? He said, pointing at a tubby, single-engine plane in a grey and green paint scheme, with a red ring around its engines and yellow tail. Grudgingly, Igora answered. The device in front pulls it forward and air flows over the wings to generate lift. Precisely. So, all that matters is airflow over the wings, right? Sensing a trap, Igora carefully thought this over before cautiously agreeing. Yes, I suppose you can say that. His smirk widening, Pat replied. Well then, if airflow over the wings is all that matters, what happens when you stick a wing on a pole and spin it fast? Igora exploded. Rubbish! Wings cannot rotate! Pat's only response was an ear-to-ear grin and a two-handed gesture towards the departing helicopters, now playing some song about a fortunate son. Igora stared at the helicopters, trying to stretch his brain to make sense. He could barely believe his eyes over the screaming disbelief of centuries of McClary's aerospace science. It should not fly. And yet it flew. Wings cannot move. And yet they moved. Slowly, ruthlessly, he crushed his rebelling thoughts. He slowly began to make sense. With blades whose pitch could be adjusted for lift, with a tail rotor with adjustable pitch to control direction by angling forward, Igora gradually began to understand how such a device could work.
Who was the genius who created the first helicopter?
He asked, subdued. Pat pursed his lips in thought. There are actually quite a few people who developed various helicopter models at various points in history, but people usually credit Igor Sikorsky with making the first practical helicopter.
Multiple people? Multiple people who developed what centuries of the greatest scientists in the galaxy couldn't even conceive?
Igor slowly sank to the ground, sitting on it as an alien capabilities of the humans echoed in his mind. Behind him, a hangar with the sign HH-43 Husky opened its doors to reveal a twin-rotor aircraft. Pete looked at Gonzal, jerked his head in the direction of the Husky, and waved his hand by his neck in a cut-in motion. Gonzal walked over to speak with the ground crew, which eventually closed its doors back up. Igor sat, mind still whirring.
How can humans have conceived the inconceivable?